I 30-year-old female live with my husband in an apartment complex. I have an older sister with 2 kids, nephew 3 and niece 6. Her husband, kid stepdad, and I don't get along and disagree on a lot of things. I don't know if the real problem is me or him, but he has resentment towards me. I watch my sister's kids from time to time, and her husband is fine with it as far as I know. Last week we all met at my uncle's home except my husband. Brother-in-law and I got into a stupid argument when brought up my husband's mental struggle and made fun of it. I embarrassed him saying at least my husband has a real struggle and not neglecting his stepkids to go gamble with friends and get his wife into debts to pay. He got offended and made a scene, then left. My sister came over next day with the kids and apologized, then asked if I could watch the kids till 1 p.m. I said absolutely, the kids are innocent in this and my sister is trying to make a living and pay off debts. At 10 a.m. my husband was asleep when the door knocked and I opened and there was a cop standing outside. First I thought my unhinged mother called the cops, another story, but was shocked when the cop told me that my brother-in-law called them claiming I was having his stepkid stay with me, despite him not agreeing. I told him there must have been a misunderstanding because the kid's mother brought them to me to babysit after she asked and I said yes as their aunt. I even called my sister and put her on speaker and she was confused. She told the cop her husband knew and had no problem with her bringing the kids over to me and even gave permission. At this point I figured brother-in-law was trying to get back at me because of our argument. I was terrified because if my sister didn't confirm what I said then my brother-in-law could have framed me for God knows what, especially after he claimed that my husband was mentally unstable. The cop took my sister's contact information and told her to come pick the kids up. This was ruled out as family dispute, but I was shaken up by what happened because I had unpleasant encounters with the authorities, but this cop seemed understanding yet strict. My sister said she just got into a fight with her husband for basically calling the cops and lying to them to get back at me and kept apologizing saying this won't happen again. I was upset. I said I don't care and won't be babysitting the kids for her anymore because like I said, I have so much on my plate and don't want issues with the authorities. She begged saying she's struggling with money and cannot afford a babysitter now. She reminded me of how much she supported me in the past, which is true, and I felt bad for not wanting to help her while she's struggling knowing her husband is the problem, but I suggested her husband to step up since he doesn't want me watching his stepkids, but she says it's complicated. So, am I wrong for saying this? Not the idiot. The cops are not a freaking dog that you can just sick on people cause you don't like them. Don't you do it, fellow readers. I know you want to, there are real repercussions to this. What your brother-in-law did was over the line and you can't put you and yours in a position like that. I'm sorry for your sister, but she can't control her husband's actions. She can't guarantee that this won't happen again and she's wrong for guilting you about it when it was his actions that caused this. Not the idiot. Your comment to your brother-in-law was petty, but totally understandable in defense of your husband. Now that you know brother-in-law rather makes everyone else's life difficult rather than facing his own demons, your contact with him and your sister needs to be carefully planned. You need to protect your own livelihood before that of anyone else first. If you want to still help out babysitting for your sister, you probably want to write up a contract that she and brother-in-law sign starting they are contracting you for your services. Also, your sister should look into getting out of that marriage as soon as possible. Not the idiot. I get that she is struggling, but she chooses to be with this fool who filed a false police statement. If you do decide to babysit for her, both you and her need to go down to the police station and get it on the record that he filed a false report against you. If you don't want to babysit anymore, it's understandable. Her husband threatened your stability with his lies. I wouldn't babysit until she leave him, but it is up to you. I have been with my girlfriend for 3 years. Over the past 2 days. She has changed a lot. I work, she's a stay-at-home wife, I know it's stupid, but she was very good at it over the last year. Did all the chores and cooked amazing food, so I was fine with it. I make enough and have inheritance for the both of us anyways. Now Friday, I come home to my dirty clothes on the couch, no food for me, she cooked and ate herself. I was surprised at this. I asked her what was all this, and she said she was sick of babying me. I asked her what she meant, and she talked to her friend who talked sense into her. She told my girlfriend that she was raising a man-child. and that she was becoming a replacement of my mother to me. Since she does everything, all the household stuff, cooking, cleaning, laundry etc., and I hardly know to do that, both completely true. That I was just being a leech and using her as a maid. I was shocked that she believed all this crap and we had a huge fight. Next morning, nothing changed. We kept fighting and Saturday evening, I had enough of this. I told her that she would have 10 days to leave the apartment and find herself a place. I told her I wouldn't be her father anymore by paying for everything and she would have to make arrangements if she was going to continue behaving that way. We fought and she left to her friend's place. Some friends told me I might have been doing a bit too much by kicking her out. Am I the idiot for this? Everyone's the idiot here. You earned the money and her end of the deal was clearly to be the homemaker if she wasn't working. Without kids to take care of, that job should have been easy. Unfortunately, she let a third party get in her head, having her think she should get away with both earning no money for the house and not taking care of it. It is weird though how it only took 2 days of fighting for you to kick her out after a 3-year relationship. Surely you both could have come to the table and had a reasonable conversation about redefining who has what responsibility. She needs to get a job and make her own money if she wants to completely refute the idea of being the homemaker. I wish I could be a stay-at-home husband. Not the idiot. From what I get out of the post is OP works and pays the bills and a girlfriend doing the house chores during the day, but she decides she doesn't want to do that anymore. If that is the case, then she should get a job and help pay the bills and they split the chores. My wife and I both work and we both do chores around the house. If she didn't work I would expect she would do the housework during the day, though on weekend I would help around the house as well. She can't stay at home and also do nothing. Everyone's the idiot here. She might be happier if she got a job because that can be more fulfilling for some people than waiting on your partner and taking care of the house. Have you encouraged her to get a job if she wants to? She's been doing this well for 3 years. You spend one weekend without it and you lose your mind. Also, you need to learn how to do laundry, holy cow. Even if I was a stay-at-home wife I would be bothered if my partner didn't even know how to do basic chores. No wonder she feels like your mother, and that's a big turn off. For context, I, 37, have 3 kids, 13, 9, 5, 2 with my wife, 38, but my son is a stepkid to her. In our house we have a very specific chore schedule that works in a way so that all of us can do chores and still have plenty of free time and family time on top of homework and sports. It took a long time to come up with a system and the allowance system, as my wife has always been iffy about our kids doing too little to help and about us giving them allowance in the first place. We ended up working this out when the oldest were toddlers and it's been the system for several years. Yesterday, I came home early and was getting ready to start with dinner when I noticed my daughter's and wife's nails were done in full with nice colors and even some nail extensions. The only time it could have been done was during chore time. Unless she'd gotten the kids home from school early, this is impossible. Our kids' school gives the other parent a call when they're picked up early, or she'd skipped out on chores. With how strict my wife is about the whole thing, I heavily doubt she'd skip out on chores that only take 30 minutes for nails. My daughter had started talking about how much fun they'd had. When I asked her how they found the time for it, she slipped up admitting that her brother was doing their chores. When I asked how long, she went on to say since September. I then went to go ask my wife, who got deflective saying our daughter had lied and that they just rushed through chores that day. Told her I'd go ask my son about it and that if it went about our daughter was truly lying, then we'd scold her for the lie. Checked it out with our son and our daughter was right. He said he thought I was in on the change, and while he was talking he brought up that mom said he wouldn't be paid since it was help and not work. I went right to my bag downstairs, got my wallet and pulled out the entirety of September's money and gave it to him. I told him I'd go to the bank and get him October's money too for the full month, not just what he'd worked for having to deal with this. My wife flipped out. She started an argument directly in front of the kids, and as much as I tried to calm her down and get her to talk privately, she wouldn't budge. All shouting ended up waking our toddler who had been napping throughout this, and that's what finally stopped the screaming match. She's been calling me the idiot for simply paying our son without even talking to her, and that his chores were much too easy, so he had to do extra work to make up for his slacking. Note, he does the downstairs bathroom and the toddler's room. Neither of which are easy, and that slackers shouldn't be paid. To prevent more fights, I compromised by letting the problem go and my son keep his money until we could figure the whole thing out. We're keeping the peace for Halloween, but haven't talked about it at all. The worst part of this story is that your son has been doing their chores for over a month, and your wife and daughter only got their nails done once. So the rest of the time they were just sitting around watching him do double or triple chores, and your daughter was collecting allowance for her chores. Your wife and daughter have been lying to you, as well as your wife behaving like a villain. Please address these issues before it's too late. Your wife is straight up treating her stepson like a Cinderella, and she lied about it. If she thought she did nothing wrong, she would have told you. Other than letting her know that this is unacceptable, I'm not sure what there is to discuss. Also, please make sure that your will and any benefits that your son would get in case of your demise do not pass through your wife's hands at all. You should also arrange for a family member to have custody of him until adulthood. You apologized to your son and made it up to him without intending to humiliate your wife in the presence of your family. It does sound like you both shouted in front of the children, which you shouldn't have, even if she started it. Screaming doesn't have to be a match. You can walk away and refuse to play. Keeping the peace won't work long term. If she habitually treats your son poorly, this is the tip of the iceberg, and you need to talk about it, possibly with a therapist. A few months ago, my in-laws had a party. My husband is always the life of the party, and he got super drunk when he and his niece were doing shots. When I saw how drunk he was, I led him to a chair to sleep it off. I know what he's like when he's drunk. I wanted to take him home, but it's an hour drive, and I needed him to sleep a bit before we got in the car. He doesn't drink like that often, but when he does, I know how to handle it in the way that's the best for me and us. It's not easy getting a drunk person to stop drinking, as many of you know. His sisters were getting ready to leave the party and wanted to wake him to say goodbye. I asked each of them not to, and they got deeply angry at me. They screamed at me, they said he's my brother, and riled up the rest of the family. One of the sisters tried to convince me that he belongs to them, not me, because they share a bloodline. I told each of them they could wake him, but then they also had to take him home. They declined. I also told them that he won't even remember that they said goodbye, so what's the point? Go kiss him on the forehead and leave. But nope, 3 months later they still won't talk to me. I saw them last night, and they avoided me, or intentionally ignored me. Not the idiot. Your husband's sisters were a little icky there with the territoriality. From a religious standpoint, a man cleaves to his wife, not his sisters. This all strikes me as a really dysfunctional family environment between the heavy drinking and your in-laws' behavior. And if your husband is regularly getting this drunk to this degree, he's an alcoholic. I have never been falling down drunk in front of my family, and I can't imagine getting to that state. Sounds like some counseling is in order to talk about boundaries with the family and appropriate behavior. Not the idiot. Also, I think you defending your spouse's sleep is so considerate and wonderful of you. Such a small thing, well it should be, but your sister-in-laws are something else to show how much you love them and think about them. My grandma used to shush all the grandkids when my grandpa was napping, and I always felt that was special because he was at his most vulnerable sleeping, but she was watching his back. I always shut up and read a book. Maybe your sister-in-laws are simply threatened by you for some reason and therefore wanted to bring you down a notch, and having failed, they threw a fit. One of the sisters tried to convince me that he belongs to them, not me, because they share a bloodline. Well, that's just creepy. The reality is you simply have more experience with him being drunk, and you're the one who sleeps next to him. And you did ultimately say they could wake him, they just have to also take him home. Wonder why they didn't agree to it. Seems like a simple trade-off, especially if he belongs to them. I, 25, recently just got married to my wonderful husband, 26. A little bit of background, my parents divorced each other when I was around 14. Shortly after, my dad met and remarried another woman, let's call her Brenda. With split custody and me having a close relationship with both of my parents, I would spend half a week at my mother's house and the other half at my father and Brenda's house. I have 4 siblings, 3 of which are boys, and then there's my sister and I. My sister and I have always been daddy's girls, and I've just recently realized now that growing up, all of Brenda's disdain towards my sister and I, but not our brothers, probably stemmed from jealousy. A few examples: making little comments when my dad would buy gifts for us such as "they don't need that, they'll grow up to be spoiled brats," etc. But never had anything to say when my dad would buy things for my brothers. Would make comments on my weight and appearance, would generally seem annoyed anytime I tried to talk to her, went as far as making false assumptions to my father that I was having love and maybe pregnant. As we got a little bit older, she'd have no problem with letting our brothers use her car, but always said no to my sister and I. She was in general just a very mean woman for no reason. Fast forward a couple of years, I haven't been in contact with Brenda that much, only seen her a couple of times when I'd go visit my dad, and she remained the same all mean Brenda like I always knew. Well, recently when time for my wedding came around, my dad brought Brenda as his +1 without my knowledge. When I saw her, immediately I was upset. Well, technically, she is kind of family. I obviously only wanted people who I am on good terms with and have good relationships with at my wedding. So, I told my husband, who politely asked her to leave and offered to escort her. Now a few days after, I'm getting angry messages from my dad saying what I did was unacceptable and how Brenda's feelings are very hurt and found what I did disheartening and very embarrassing, which I find very laughable honestly. The problem is my dad wants me to apologize to her and says I am not welcome to their home anymore unless I apologize. Even after explaining why I did what I did to my dad, he won't accept my answer. So, am I the idiot, and should I just apologize for the sake of my dad and I's relationship? You're the idiot. Your stepmother is married to your father. They are a social unit and must be invited together. If you did not want her to attend, you should have made it clear to your father well in advance of the wedding. Throwing her out was not classy or acceptable, especially since you did not tell your father she was not invited. If your dad has made your continued relationship with him contingent on an apology to Brenda, you have to decide how important your dad is in your life. You invited your dad and then was surprised that he brought his wife. And then you ask her to leave in the middle of the wedding celebration. Definitely an idiot move. I get that she's a rotten stepmom, but you could have either chosen to set that aside and have your dad and stepmom there, or you could have told your dad way before the wedding that you aren't comfortable with stepmom there, so he could have decided whether or not to attend without her and not had all this drama. Why would you go out of your way to kick her out? I mean, did she murder babies and serve them with a side of caviar? Why didn't you talk to your dad specifically beforehand? If you couldn't do that, then you should have just accepted her presence. To leave your father's wife for a large event, I feel like you'd need a very good reason, and to communicate that with your father way in advance. Weddings are not only about the couple, that's what eloping is for. Weddings are about family, and for being a daddy's girl, you were pretty cruel to your father. I hope you can come up with the most magically healing apology ever.